there. Today we are talking about silos in data and the strategy for businesses of how to unify it. My name's Trent Hall and I'm the head of growth here at DH Marketing and joined by Pascal. Pascal?
Hi everyone, my name is Pascal and I look after technology here at DH Marketing. Really keen to get into this topic actually.
Look, unifying data seems like a pretty gigantic task for most organizations and it's significant strategic investment. Prioritizing it seems to be an ever-present need for most businesses. But however, today we're going to break it down and what it looks like, what we've seen across some of our projects, and maybe some things to help you understand what that a business case might look like when you're pushing towards that in your business. So to kind of kick things off, I'd love to hear, Pascal, why do you think unified data matters for customers in terms of maybe things like trust or loyalty?
Great question. Obviously, unified data is like one of the big buzzwords at the moment that everybody's talking about. But what does it actually mean? Look, for me, the most important thing is being able to understand what a customer actually does. So I don't just want to have transactions from one place. I want to have transactions from all places. If you're interacting with multiple brands, I want to know which brands are you interacting with. If you're interacting with multiple products, what are the products that matter? If you are buying products from, let's say you're a bank, for example, you're buying credit, you get a credit card. Do you also have a mortgage? Very often those can be separate things. If you are a not-for-profit, we have people who donate, we have people who pay to attend events, we have people who volunteer, we have people who run fundraisers. All of that information needs to be in one place so that you can actually start making decisions, segmentation, and be able to actually reach out to those people in a way that is meaningful to them. In the fundraising example I just gave, one of the challenges that some people struggle with is they have some people where they go, well, this person doesn't look like they're a very good supporter of ours. They've barely donated any money. But actually, this might be the person who organizes working bees, for example, and gets a whole bunch of people involved in projects that they're doing and helping the not-for-profit do their work. And so if you're only looking at it from the monetary point of view, you might go, well, this person's not important, but actually they are because they effectively represent the brand for so many others. And so when you're talking to them, when you're sending them comms, you need to treat them like a high-value individual, even if by some metrics they're not. But the key point here is you need all the data going to one place so that you can actually make those calls.
Yeah, I guess, that upper loyalty tier that we see in a lot of organizations rolling out loyalty programs, having the ability to see whether or not that somebody has purchased online and in store, that alone adds up probably to a lifetime value that might not be realized if you're looking at an individual silo. So I guess, speaking of that in regards to some of the efficiency holdbacks, I guess disjointed systems do cause a bit of a ruckus in organizations to be able to get things like true segments. Where else do you see that being a bit of a holdback?
Apart from the segments, look, all your analytics tend to be off if you have disjointed systems. And we see it a lot. It's really not uncommon for people to have different systems to record different things. And at the end of the day, it's always going to happen. You're always going to be fighting it because people are always creating new data sets, building new data sets, acquiring new data sets. Some organizations merge with other organizations. Suddenly the number of connections increases. So that's always going to be happening. The key thing for me is understanding how do you actually say this is a person that matters? Why does this person matter? And then bringing that in together. Recently, I was working with some customers where they have a sizable employee base and a lot of people who've done part-time work for them in the past. They need to merge that in. It's like they thought they had a single view of the customer, but suddenly when you bring that in, it's like, oh no, that's housed in an entirely different system. So I can't actually tell if you're a customer and an employee or just one or just the other. And there were enough people that it mattered for some of the executions they were doing.
Yeah, okay, so that's a really good point, right? So let's think about some of the unification steps involved. What is the first step of building a central source of truth or a single truth for organizations? Where do you think they should start?
So this is the great one. And this is a highly controversial topic. And I'm probably going to upset somebody with what I'm about to say. Because obviously what we see often happens is people don't just have one single view of the customer. They end up with two single view of the customers, which at the surface makes no sense, right? If I say that to you, like, hang on, you've made things even worse, Pascal. What's going on? But how do we get here? So generally speaking, you have two different groups within an organization that are trying to achieve this. And they come at it from very different ends. On one side, you tend to have IT or finance that says, I want a single view of the customer based on the goals that they are trying to achieve. And that project is very often a gigantic project with a whole bunch of things like finance and accounting implications around that. And I understand that work needs to be done, And it needs to be done for a variety of really good reasons. That is a very big and hard, complicated project. You'll often hear acronyms like MDM being mentioned when someone goes down that path. And that's cool. However, from the other end, you often have business users who are trying to do business execution or marketers that are trying to do marketing execution that have a substantially reduced set of needs in a unified view of the customer. They are willing to have some inaccuracy in their data if it means that they can action it today instead of in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time, right? And that's the key thing. If I'm talking to you about a contract that you have with me, then that information needs to be, and you're talking about details of the contract, that information needs to be perfect. Because if the not information in there is not perfect, we've got a problem. However, if we have a unified individual view that is slightly fuzzier, but where we say there's a high likelihood that this person has that because somebody with that phone number, for example, has a contract with us, we can actually have a different conversation because we can make some assumptions around what it is. And as long as I don't say something like, hey, Trent, your phone contract's about to expire. If your name's not actually Trent and it's not your phone contract, then it's actually okay. Because when you look at so many of the executions around, when you call a call center, when you look at a web page, when you get an email, you don't actually know how targeted that is. The key point here is getting close enough that we can bring some of the data up and generally speaking, have the right execution on that. Now, why does this matter? There's two reasons for me. Oh, and by the way, that second approach is normally referred to as a CDP in some way, shape, or form. So why does this matter to me? The first project, the one run by IT, is going to take 5 years and it's going to cost potentially millions if you're a big organization. And here's the worst part. When they have finished that project, if they finish it and it works well, you still will not be able to do what the marketer wants to do because that view is a technical view and you'll end up in a situation where someone will say, oh, can I have the group of people who need to do this? And IT will go, no problem. Here's a SQL prompt. You go and write some SQL and make that happen. That hasn't actually helped you at all, right? From a business marketing point of view. And so we go to the other side, which is the activation side from a business and marketing point of view, which is, okay, I have all these data sources I brought in together. This was not a big IT project. This was effectively a business project where we decided these are the things that we needed. IT provided some data sets, potentially. I'm not saying you have to cut IT out, but it's a different conversation when you're willing to say, I know we can't make this perfect right now because we don't have the data to make it perfect, but I can make it good enough that I can give my customers a better experience. And that's the really important part because that's a lot easier to do. And the other thing is, it's also a lot more flexible. So if you change your mind about some of the rules, then that's all right. Change the rules, adjust, make things better, and improve the experience for your customer. And some of the learnings that you have, maybe things that feed into the other IT project if that's running. But that's a much easier project to run. And on top of all that, when the IT team has finished their large project, that just becomes one additional source into your system. And away we go from that. We've just added more to it.
Speaking of customer experience, one of the big focuses that we see in the evolving world of marketing technology and service is AI, right? Now, obviously, unifying data creates a great resource base for that AI, maybe a large language model to feed off or that agent to look up information. Let's extrapolate what you just said about, the two worlds of those two unified sources. Apply that to how an agent might actually meet the customer's need or provide better service. Where does it draw the data from? Does it draw it from both? What do you think?
Yes, draw it from both. Absolutely. But I think the example that you've just given actually touches on another point of that two approach thing. You have a lot of data that will never make it into the big IT project because it is data that is dirty, right? If marketing runs a survey, that data will never be allowed into that MDM project run by IT because it's dirty. Some of the data is wrong. Some of it was collected on paper. Some of it has Donald docs in it or people who are not customers. Similarly, data that is collected on the web, people who've looked at the web page, if they're not logged in, also not connected in. What's really interesting about the thing that you said with the agent is that a lot of agent conversations are not authenticated.
True.
So we can say, we think this conversation was probably had by Trent. And I think it was Trent because the browser that had the conversation is a browser that clicked on an email that we sent to Trent. So actually, I'm happy to infer some things from that. I'm not willing to say it was Trent, right? I'm not willing to send Trent an email and say, as per your conversation the other day, unless you've actually had some sort of authentication, I'm not willing to do that. But I am willing to say things like, oh, well, if you're asking about, what's the best dog food to get for my dog, then I'm willing to talk to you about dogs because you're probably interested in that.
True. I guess
What do you
unifying
feel about it?
unifying that
Yeah.
data that makes sense from, a conversational standpoint serves a very different purpose. And yeah, you're absolutely right. There are plenty of organizations that spend an enormity of time maybe building that master data management and looking at right down to the nitty gritty level of things purely for regulation or things that are required in their industry as well. And funnily enough, when I guess their initiation of thinking about these unification projects, sometimes the lines get so blurred in the conversation that they get held up, and I guess neither party ends up getting what they need to get, right? So
Yep.
no, that it's really interesting that you can approach it from those two ways. Think about it in slightly different ways, but at the end of the day, I guess if we're a marketer and we're wanting unifying data, that maybe not so clean data might make a world of difference to the way that a customer feels when they interact with your brand. So really important to get that in the right way, unified with, I guess, the right person. But no, that's been awesome. Thank you so much for, I guess, highlighting some really interesting ports around unifying data. It's a big look into, I guess, how that data might look even from the biggest to the smallest organizations. And it's a challenge that we face every day. So if you're interested in hearing more about how that we help customers unify their data through any of the tools across Salesforce or more, we'd love to hear from you, but feel free to reach out at info@hmarketing.com.au. Thanks again, Pas. This has actually been one of those really deep and kind of interesting topics, but I don't know. I'm a data nerd, so I love it as well.
Awesome. Thank you.